All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's after 2 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is Stephanie Foltz from GSA. I'm going to be briefing along with Paul Recklaw. If you are on the phone and can mute your phones just to make sure we don't get any feedback during the call, that would be appreciated. If you have questions during the briefing or while we're speaking, please use the chat box down below so that we can get those questions and answer them. We probably will wait and do most of the answers at the end, but feel free to put your chats there. We have other team members online as well that will be looking at those chats and helping us answer things from there. And with that, we'll get started with the brief. So thanks for joining us this afternoon. Again, my name is Stephanie Foltz. I'm here and part of GS&S, working to help bring the vendors on to the EDI and vendor portal. Next slide, please. Oh, I forgot I can control the slide. I can do it. There we go. So right now, just to let you know, with bringing vendors on to the EDI portal, GS&S here at GSA, we're working to transition all of our GS&S vendors to EDI or a vendor portal. So we're trying to take a large group of vendors and make them, put them into one of these processes. So that specifically goes right now for the fax vendors that we're targeting. We already have all our FSSI vendors. They're already using EDI to process orders. So we know the system's up, we know it's working, and we are happy with the results that we're getting using EDI. We're currently processing retail operation vendors, and we'll finish transitioning them by the end of April. It may go into early May. And then we will be putting our focus more toward the fax vendors and this group of vendors and bringing you on board. So that's for any supply chain vendors that are not on EDI or vendor portal. You can contact us for scheduling. We also know, I know the contracting officers are out there working to contact all of you all and start working to schedule you all in groups. With that, I'm going to pass it over, do a quick overview. We're going to talk about some contracting information, the operational notice that was sent out. We'll do an overview of the vendor portal. And we'll also do an overview of EDI, the benefits, transactions, B2B platform, end-to-end processing, tips for using EDI and onboarding, and also testing and what's involved when you onboard to EDI. And we know that lots of the vendors that we're speaking with today may already be using EDI, and we understand that. And since we recognize that you all are using EDI, we don't want to go in too in-depth, but feel free to ask your questions. But also using EDI is contract-specific beyond vendor-specific, so even if a vendor is already using EDI, we'll still have to onboard each of your contracts as we get to those contracts and we move through there. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul Recklaw. He'll talk about the operation notice and the contract information. So Paul, I just switched the slide for you, and you can go from there.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. Thanks for calling in, and thanks for the introduction, Stephanie. My name is Paul Recklaw. I work in the central office, the Office of Acquisition Management, Supply Chain and Special Programs Acquisition Division. And I'll give you a brief overview of the contracting portion of the EDI vendor portal requirements. We recently issued a contracting direction to our GSA acquisition workforce via an internal operational notice. The operational notice contains the contract language you will see in the bilateral modifications we are issuing. I'll say up front that we would all greatly appreciate your cooperation in completing these modifications and moving away from fax methods as quickly as possible. The latest requirements and the transaction sets for EDI and vendor portal, if you choose that method, are in the new contract language. We do expect you may have some additional costs in transitioning to EDI, but efficiencies in processing orders via that method should not result in overall additional costs and may in the long run reduce your costs. At this time, and this is bad news, or maybe the bad news to you, at this time GSA is only executing bilateral modifications incorporating the new requirements at no additional cost to the government. EDI is our preferred method of conducting business transactions, and you're going to hear this several times throughout the presentation. And the benefits of EDI will be touched on later in the presentation. Upon award of a new contract or modification of an existing contract, your contracting officer should be reminding you of the need to contact the central office EDI vendor portal business operations team for onboarding assistance. That's that GSA EDI at gsa.gov email address. EDI onboarding is required contract by contract. However, once a vendor is onboarded to EDI with one contract, the remaining ones usually go much faster because it's just additional testing for the remaining ones. It follows the same transaction sets. They just have to be tested individually. Vendor portal is only recommended for vendors that receive a low volume of orders. This method allows a vendor to see all their orders, confirm receipt of them, input shipping and tracking information, and conduct some additional order transactions. All transactions in vendor portal are done order by order, one at a time, so this method will be labor intensive for any vendor that receives a large number of orders. Our business operations office would like to completely phase out fax orders by the end of this fiscal year. The driving reason for wanting vendors on EDI or vendor portal is to obtain shipping and order tracking information that we can relay to our customers. Currently, we're kind of lacking in that information. Flip over to the next slide. You should have all received a message from us, actually it came from me, about our plans for eliminating faxing of orders and moving to EDI business processing transactions. I did have some email fails, so I know a few of you may not have received the message. Did you want to say something, Stephanie?
Oh, 1 second.
It wasn't me. It was somebody else, not on mute. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I did attach that message to the calendar invite. Both messengers are invited to the calendar invite.
Meeting guy.
Can I go on? But not sure everyone will be able to access them. You know, we've got Google security challenge on sharing stuff sometimes. If you have questions about this or couldn't open any of those attachments, just send me an email in response to my calendar invite, and we'll work through it to make sure you can see that. I also I attached this this presentation. The slides are attached to the meeting invite also. We have begun executing a phased approach to incorporate new EDI vendor portal language into your contracts. All new contracts should contain the revised language. For contract modifications, we're concentrating first on our top 40, and that's by order volume, fax vendors, and then moving on to full and partial EDI vendors. Full EDI vendors are ones that conduct all transactions via EDI. They receive and acknowledge orders, provide shipping status, and tracking information, and submit invoices, all via EDI. Partial EDI vendors, we have that category too. They're really just like fax vendors, and they only receive orders via EDI. We really need these vendors to transition to full EDI, as they're generally high order volume vendors that are EDI capable but have not implemented all EDI transaction sets that we need to collect that shipping status information. And of course, you need to provide it from your system. Our ultimate goal is to be able to fully shut off fax and not pay you until we receive full shipping status and tracking information. Don't worry, this is going to take a while, but we really need that shipping information to properly serve our customers and reduce those frequent calls of "where's my stuff" from our National Customer Service Center. And that ends my portion of the briefing, and I greatly appreciate you calling into this webinar. Back to Stephanie now for the technical details. And I'll flip the slide for you.
All right, great. All right, thanks, Paul. So going on first, what is the vendor portal? The vendor portal is an online tool that we use here at GSA, and it allows vendors who are not using EDI to have better visibility in their order and provide automatic communications between GSA and its customers. So I saw that there was the question, what is low volume? So this is, it's cost-effective solution for vendors with low order volume, and we're considering that anything less than 50 orders a month. And the reason we're asking for the low volume, it's because it is very manually intensive, has to be done one order at a time. If you're using vendor portal, you're not going to be getting notifications as soon as an order comes in. You'll have to log onto the system to see if you have an order, where EDI does allow you to get that order as soon as it goes through the system. So it's very manually intensive. So it's not really recommended for anybody that's doing more than 50 orders a month. There are some vendors that we're using that have both EDI and vendor portal based off contracts and based off what they're doing. But these vendors are using EDI for business transactions, but vendor portal gives vendors the ability to search for and review their orders in a traditional format. But as we've stated, EDI is definitely the preferred method by GSA because it provides us more information and provides us more data. what can vendors do in the portal, just so you know. You can view your purchase orders. It has search capabilities. You can download hard copies of purchase order copies. You can accept, reject cancellations. Currently, there are GSA users in each region who are capable of executing this function on behalf of vendors. You can acknowledge or partially acknowledge purchase orders. You can request substitute items, request back orders, and post-shipment information. But please note that each of these actions must be done individually, and some of these actions in the vendor portal, for instance, back orders or substitute items, might create a cancellation of the item based off your contract and what's in your contract. So just know that these are the things that you can do in the vendor portal based off the vendor and the contract that it's associated with. But again, labor intensive and has to be done individually. So talking about what is our preferred method, EDI, and why are we wanting to do this and what is it? It's the transfer of data from one computer system to another by a standardized messaging format. Again, I think there's a lot of out there that have been using EDI. Some of you all might already be using EDI for other contracts, but again, this is what we're trying to push, is to allow us to get better information, and it doesn't require that manual processes that it requires in vendor portal. The EDI goes through the system, messages go back and forth without human intervention. You can do purchase orders, order acknowledgement, status documents, and invoices, and that's the type of data information that we are looking for from the EDI. And we're going to keep saying it's our preferred method of business going on. So we do use different versions in EDI. There are different versions out there. GSA does support a few versions. The versions we support are 3010, 3040, and 4010. And so each of these versions are compatible with the GSA system. So what are the benefits for using EDI? It reduces the errors because electronic communication eliminates that possibility of data entries. It reduces labor, eliminates data requirements, facilities, warehouse operations with labeling, pick lists. The labels are already in the system for you. It's faster with shipments and reconciling and getting invoices, which everybody wants to get those invoices paid. So that's definitely a big push for it on the speed side. And all major suppliers base their transactions on EDI. It's a prerequisite for vendors seeking to compete across a wide spectrum of products and customers. So since EDI is used in the commercial sector, you know, it's also used here with GSA, so it is a standard that's used inside and outside of the government. There are different EDI transactions. There's a lot of different EDI transactions out there, but GSA has a focus of just a few that we're going to go over. These transactions happen quickly and automatically between the system and the vendor system. And since it eliminates that need for human interaction, it also gives us the data that we need. So maybe with the hope of reducing some of those calls that you're getting from the call centers, where your order is, using EDI allows us to know where that order is when that question comes into the call center, and can alleviate some of those calls that you'll get from GSA. The different transaction types that GSA is looking for, the primary ones are sending the purchase order to the vendor, 850, acknowledging receipt of a purchase order, 855, sending shipment notifications, 856, and sending invoice information, 810. So this is just a table, something that you all can refer back to after this briefing. You should have already received the slides. If not, we'll be sending them out after for anybody that hasn't been able to receive them. And this just gives you a chart for GSA and what we're supporting and what the different versions are and the different transactions that are supported on those versions. So this is a good quick sheet for you all to look at as you're working on your technical portion of getting connected to EDI. So here are those transactions that we're talking about. First of all, we do the 997, the functional acknowledgement. This is just the basic, hey, our system is talking to your system and we're ready to send an order and everybody's able to look and receive. Again, the purchase order. This is with the purchase order, the 850, the information we're looking for is vendor number, DUNS, the item ordered, unit cost, the quantities, the address, shipping information, and other PO details traditionally found on a purchase order. So those are the things that we're really looking for on that purchase order. Next is that 855 acknowledgement. This lets us, communication from the vendor to GSA. It lets us know that you either accepted the order, that it got put in a back order status, and if there's an estimated ship date, or that you weren't able to fulfill the order and you canceled it or you rejected the order. The 856, the advanced ship notice. This is an electronic version of a printed packing slip that tells the buyer that the goods have been shipped, how they've been packaged, and the estimated arrival. It contains order information, product descriptions, carrier information, packaging information, and marking information. This is one of the key things that we look at in GSA when we're looking to provide customers updated information. Right here is an example of what we see in our system and the order management system that we use. This is the screen that we would look at to be able to look and be able to know what's going on with these orders. And again, if the call center gets a question in, they can pull this up at the call center and be able to answer most of the customer questions without having to make that call to the vendor. Yeah. 860, the purchase order change request. This is GSA initiated. It indicates that there was a change on that original 850 that was sent. It usually occurs because of a back order or because GSA is canceling the purchase order. If GSA accepted the back order in 860 is sent with an updated date on the 860. This is to make sure that the vendors know that we've accepted the back order and also provide any information in case of cancellation. And we do an 810, the invoice. This is used by the supplier to invoice, gives us the items, price, quantities delivered, payment details, and payment terms. The payment is still being issued by USDA Finance. It is not issued by IBM, even though IBM manages our EDI portal. All payment is still done through the finance system here on the government side. So those are the different types of transactions. So talking about the B2B EDI platform, so that's what we call our EDI. So sometimes you'll hear us say EDI. At times you might hear somebody from GSA say B2B. It is our platform that we're using, and it is hosted by IBM. So we will have IBM helping you with onboarding. We'll have IBM helping you with testing and any troubleshooting of issues that you have with getting on to EDI. It is a separate interface from our order management system. So our order management system is what we're using for any orders that are coming through the system, but the B2B Gateway is a separate platform that IBM manages for the EDI piece of it. It connects GSA to its business partners for standardized EDI transactions, and we support multiple connection types. You can do a VAN, you can do an SFTP, or an AS2. Any of those transaction types will work, or connection types will work when you connect the B2B EDI gateway. So end-to-end processing, just so you can get an idea of what it looks like from our side to your side through the gateway. See an 850 go through from us to the vendor. See that 997, which is just that acknowledgement. That will happen at each time that we make sure that there's just that acknowledgement that we can send information back and forth. We update the GSA system, and with an 855, accept the purchase order. Once the product shipped, 856 goes from the vendor over to GSA. When you generate and send an invoice, the 810 goes through the vendor back over to GSA so that we can match the invoice and make the record payable. FedPay will then process that payment. This gives you an idea of how many transactions are usually done per order. So, you know, it can be 5, it can be 10, just depending on what happens with an order. So right here you're seeing 7 different transactions for one order go through the system. And so part of that, when I say those 7 transactions, that's part of just EDI tips and what you can consider if you're a first-time EDI vendor. Those that are already using EDI are already aware of the costs that might be associated with it. We can't tell you exact costs. They vary based off the solution that you use as far as connecting to the EDI or the B2B gateway. So determining whether or not you use a VAN or SFTP, that will all make a difference. You should look around at your different options. There's an initial EDI setup cost usually, and also monthly and individual transaction costs. a lot of those times, those monthly individual transaction costs, you'll pay for so many transactions per month. So, I'm sorry, is there a comment? So again, there's different options out there for you all to look at and look into as you're trying to set up how we're going to, as we start to plan for you all to come on the EDI portal. There are different costs associated with it. You also need to work on making sure you train your staff and that somebody on your staff understands the lingo, understands what transactions to look for and what they're expecting. There may be additional labor support if you have to hire somebody or you have to train somebody. And there may be maintenance costs to your system for any changes that you need to make sure that you can connect with EDI. So EDI onboarding and what is the process from our side? Again, we work through EDI onboarding based off contracts, not vendor. We have manpower and what we can bring on board at one time. So if you are a vendor and you happen to have several contracts, but we only reach out to you to onboard 2 or 3 contracts at this time, we will be reaching out to you for the rest of the contracts. But we're going through and trying to make sure that we prioritize what we're on, how much we're onboarding and what we're onboarding. Again, our initial focus is the top 40 fax vendors, or the top 40 fax vendors that do the largest amount of orders. We want to get those vendors onboarded, and then we'll be working on the next group of vendors and the next group. And we've, with a large group of vendors or a large group of contracts that we need to actually onboard, we're just trying to prioritize those. So we will be onboarding based off contract, not just vendor. So GS&S will initiate the vendor onboarding process. We've already started with the operational notice, but the next piece, we'll be sending a vendor survey out for the EDI connectivity. So that vendor survey will have what you need to know from a technical specs and what's going to be needed to connect to the EDI gateway. And you will provide the information from your side back to us that we can send that over to IBM. When we get your vendor survey back, we will schedule a kickoff meeting. That kickoff meeting is with GSA, the vendor, and IBM, and it's to transition the process over to IBM so IBM can start the onboarding from a technical perspective. IBM will then start defining the EDI testing with each vendor. They'll look at the sample transactions that will validate the proper connectivity. They'll create a testing timeline with those vendors so the vendors can let us know when they're available and IBM can work on those timelines. And they'll conduct the testing process with each vendor. We can process 5 to 6 contracts on board at the same time. So don't expect us to, if you haven't gotten, once we get your survey again, even with those 40 vendors, we're going to have to group them in 5 or 6 at a time. And once one vendor gets out of the queue, we'll bring another vendor into the queue. So we will be going through that with the process along with the contracts piece. The testing process with the vendor, IBM will continue to work with you until the vendor has fully tested and been able to process all transaction types. So tips on the onboarding process: complete that survey and get it back to us in a timely manner. And if the vendor is already doing EDI, as mentioned, Paul mentioned, it's going to be a quicker process because we know that the connection's there, but again, it's loading that new contract and still making sure with the new contract and the new items that that testing still takes place. But somebody that's already on EDI will move quicker than somebody that's starting from the beginning. Here's the EDI testing process. You initiate onboarding. Again, vendor receives the EDI technical survey. You complete it, return it to GSA. We ask those surveys come back within 5 days from when you get them. And the vendor works to establish their connections to the IBM gateway. So again, if it's a VAN, SFTP, AS2, whatever you need to do your connection, we want to make sure that's connected prior to core testing. Once you move to core testing, IBM will work to, we already have catalogs loaded for testing. We work with our CIO here to make sure that your catalog is loaded so that we can do testing. IBM will validate communication between the vendor and IBM gateway, and they'll start their EDI set of testing with all your transaction sets. Some delays that could occur is if we're waiting for the vendor to respond. If there's a reason that we cannot get a response from vendor, we will be working with the CO to try to reach out to you. but it's imperative, and we really need for the vendors to make sure they're responding back if the email comes from GSA or it comes from IBM, so that you're making sure you stay in touch with us. Other delays are just, anything that's a technical piece on either IBM side or on the vendor side. That's another delay that we've seen a couple of times. Production readiness, confirm communication between GSA and FedPay, so that's the financial piece. We'll resolve any technical issues, and we'll complete testing and confirm OMS processing. So from the beginning of initiation till you're onboarded can take from 30 days to 90 days. There's obviously some, there may be some anomalies there, but that's the average time that we're seeing, 30 to 90 days per vendor, depending on if they're already an EDI vendor or if they're new. So that's the end of the presentation. So I know I've seen some questions coming through here. I see Shanna's on there answering a lot, as well as Guy and Katie. This is our email, the GSA EDI at gsa.gov. If you ever have any questions, or when we send out those surveys, you'll be getting communications from GSA EDI at gsa.gov. You won't see it typically from an individual mailbox here at GSA. We try to push all our communications to you, whether it be an operational notice, that vendor survey will come from that box, and we want all communication to come back to that box. We have several people that can keep an eye on that to make sure that we aren't a delay in the process for this. I see a lot of questions. Shanna, you've been looking. I haven't been managing the chat. I don't know if you want to go through any specific questions, or Paul, you've seen a contract question.
I think one thing to keep in mind and to stress over, one thing, we have touched upon costs, but GSA will not charge you to use EDI. I want to make that perfectly clear. Any costs you may incur is just by use of your own EDI provider. And it is important that, many of you hold multiple contracts with GSA. So, if you hold 5 or 10 different GSA contracts, each contract does need to be added to the B2B system. So just because you may be receiving orders via EDI and you've gotten the full spectrum of EDI, you need to ensure that every single contract that you have is included to be on EDI. Otherwise, you might be still getting faxes for some of your contracts. So that's why we're having this meeting, is we do have a mixture. Many of you might have some that are still designated as receiving faxes, while you have other contracts that are already good to go full EDI. So it's important to remember, with that broad range of mixture, there is still work to be done.
Say, Shanna, there was a question from Catherine Levy about, since we don't have a catalog, how do we load our products into EDI? I can address that. This presentation really is just about transactions, order transactions via EDI. We're not, the uploading products into our systems, that's outside of the realm of what we're talking about here. That's totally separate, really.
And honestly, we're dealing with national stock numbers, and that is kind of our catalog. And Catherine, I see your comment that you're on security containers. We identify low volume as being 50 per month, but if you're below 50, that doesn't exclude you from going EDI. The efficiencies of EDI are, that's what we're striving for, is the fact that it eliminates human interaction. We have, direct system-to-system connections to where you're able to expedite, get those orders quickly, get a lot of the information formatted much quicker. I think in the realm of the 810s, which is for invoicing purposes, you can also get paid much quicker. So that's, even if you're right at 50, you probably still want to consider utilizing EDI.
So, Shanna, there's also this question from Jim about an FTP folder. I think you're getting fax orders probably dumped into the FTP folder. That's definitely going to change on your side. Did you see that one, Shanna? I don't know if you want to comment on that from Jim. It's down near the bottom. Well,
I don't see it. I do see Dave, since I just made the comment about the 810, you are correct. We do need a shipment confirmation with an 856 in order to process the 810. So without a shipment confirmation, your 810 will not be accepted, and that is because part of your contractual requirement is the government will not pay you unless the product has been shipped. And that, you know it now. Most of your contracts do indicate the government will not ship or pay you unless you have shipped the product. So with EDI, we actually have a transaction set, and that is what it's looking for.
let me read this question from Jim. It says, Paul, we currently have an FTP folder set up to obtain our Advantage orders. We dump them into our order management system. Anything done on these legacy fax systems will not change our existing setup, correct? I don't know what Advantage orders he's talking about. Coming out of, coming out of OMS? That would.
Well, no, GSA Advantage has their own EDI and other methods. You know, if you're a multiple award schedule holder and you're advertising your GSA Advantage product offerings, you're receiving
right. So he would still get. That would still work for him because those faxes will still come, right, out of Advantage, right? Yeah, okay, right. Jim. Let's see if we missed any more. I've been following these. Containers.
So I think, Kristen, you had a question. Are there any EDI providers that GSA does not accept? Not to my knowledge. We just ask, you know, we laid out the transaction sets that we're expecting. We don't really endorse any providers, and to my knowledge, we don't not accept any providers. But we do recommend that you shop around. Prices will vary. You touch base with any of your other industry partners that you network with. Maybe they have positive experience with some industry EDI providers, more so than others.
Naveen at NIB had a question. I don't know if you had addressed it before. It says, can we single log in to access all contract POs in the vendor portal? Yeah, vendor portal you set up by DUNS number, so you have access to all your orders in one account. It's not by contract. It's everything under DUNS.
I do believe, though, Paul, you have to associate in vendor portal. It is by DUNS, but you do have to associate users by contract. There is like an overarching, almost like an administrator, and then you can assign particular people to particular contracts. Maybe you don't want Jane Doe to be involved in this contract, so you don't give them permission. Again, there's different roles that you can assign, and you know, from my recollection, they may have tweaked that, but you can set up privileges. Please note that in vendor portal, we do not allow generic email addresses. If you all are used to setting up a user with your just generic company's address, we cannot do that in vendor portal. We do need a live human being with the individual's name.
And I don't know if you got this one from Connie Lee. Would each contract be a separate trading partner, or is it still one trading partner? I think, is that the EDI provider? It would be just one, wouldn't it?
Well, you would have one EDI trading partner, and then each contract is a separate envelope. So we would set you up by the DUNS, and that would establish our interchange and address from the IBM B2B system with your trading partner. And we would ensure that we have that connection. Once we have that address validated, each separate contract becomes an envelope in which we would then deposit orders. So you don't need a separate trading partner for each contract. Once you have the trading partner, we simply establish envelopes for each particular contract.
We got a couple down here at the bottom. I think they're still coming in. Teef, he said, being a partial EDI vendor, we still get faxes, which helps us because we notice every so often the address is not always complete accurate in an EDI transaction. Will this be fixed? Well, hopefully it'll be fixed because eventually we want to turn off faxes.
So Paul, in that instance, you may still be getting faxes because you do have a contract out there that is probably still set up to have orders faxed to you.
But this is Mark. When we do load the contract as being either V for vendor portal or E for EDI, the fax goes away. Then you only get orders the one way.
For newly established contracts, yes.
Even for established contracts is what Keith was telling me.
That has not been enabled yet.
Okay, so Keith has given me a little bit different information there, but we can talk about that offline.
I don't know if you hit this one, Shannon, before. Dave Miller from Granger. So without a response data in 856, payment will not be made for the 810. Is that true? I don't think that's true.
Was that the one about the 856 and the 810?
Yeah. Did you already address that one?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
We do have some questions about when will the survey be issued. As it was mentioned earlier in the presentation, there will be scheduling that whether you will contact the email address on the screen or your contracting officers reach out to you to say, hey, we would like you to start this process. Once there's initiation of scheduling, get you set up with EDI, then an initial vendor survey will be provided at that point.
Say, Shannon, this question from Sunshine Castillo. Are we moving away from GSA PO portal? I don't know what that is. Do you know?
I'm not familiar unless it was something to do with GSA Advantage, which again, this is not part of, we're focusing on GSA global supply orders.
Did you see this? I don't know. You might have addressed this, Shannon, but that Lori sheet. We currently also have 832 outbound catalog and 824 application advice with GSA. I don't think that's going to be outside of the realm of OMS, isn't it?
Right. And
will those be transitioned as well? Right.
The GSA Advantage EDI transactions. So what we went over in our presentations are what we're expecting as the required EDI transaction sets that we are dealing with for GSA global supply orders. So we do realize there are, an extensive array of EDI transactions out there. what we covered in today's presentation is what we're going to expect that that's going to be the requirement for our EDI transactions to support the GSA global supply orders. So I think we did get confirmation. Rick Brown had stated PO portal is for Advantage orders.
Okay, that's outside, the realm of this. Yeah, and Kelly B asked, once we're set up with EDI and are receiving our orders through EDI system, will GSA portal no longer be available? If you're talking about vendor portal, you could have a vendor portal account and you would be able to view your orders there. Oh, I'm sorry. If you have if you're all full EDI and you need to have view access to your orders, you could get that through vendor portal, but you can't do anything in vendor portal. You can only conduct transactions via EDI, but you could have viewing. You could be able to view your orders through vendor portal.
Hey, Paul, this is Keith. Is Emily talking about, is she a full vendor portal or partial? I've been asking her that. She hasn't answered my question yet. Is she online or is she just...
You already answered it, Key. That's okay. You can have vendor portal as a backup.
Yeah, she could use that as backup, but if she's a full EDI, she shouldn't even need a vendor portal. That was my question.
Right, she's saying it's no longer available, but are we restricting vendors? They can't have vendor portal if they're full EDI?
No, they could have both.
I didn't catch that, Guy.
Yeah, they could have both EDI and vendor portal.
Right. But they can't conduct any transactions in vendor portal.
Well, I mean, if they have EDI, I don't see a reason for having vendor portal, but as a backup, yeah, if something happens to their EDI system, they could do everything EDI can do just manually.
Right. Jim asked, is there a domain user ID available to pull the attachments from the GSA Google apps? Oh, are you talking about just getting access to the presentations? You have to have you have to have the right kind of Google account. If this is related to anything that was in the attachments that were in the meeting invite, the messages we sent out to the vendors or the presentation, just shoot me an email back from that calendar invite, and I'll just send the attachments to you separately, because they were shared from the Google Drive, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. Can we have multiple trading partners? See a question from AJ, can we have multiple trading partners? Would you ever do that?
I mean, you could, but again, that's going to be a cost driver for you.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking, why do you want to have multiple?
Yeah, yes, but we don't know why.
So, Jim, you had a question regarding FOB origin and FOB destination. I would recommend that you contact your contracting officer with those items. If it has not been reported up to us on the OMS project team, we need to flag that as a potential defect for you as to you receiving the wrong information on your contract. You should be getting the right information, but it is something we are examining. We are looking at when items are being submitted on your purchase orders. You know, is it populating with the correct shipping terms? And by that I mean whether it's FOB origin or destination. So that is something that we'll definitely look at. So the raw data, Naveen, you had a, can we have access to EDI raw data of the PO 850 in vendor portal? No. The raw data is your EDI. Vendor portal is a mapping of information coming out of OMS. It is, in essence, an emulation of our GSA Form 3186. EDI data is a totally different format. So we would have to basically create anew, which we're not going to do. So vendor portal will continue to emulate the PO 3186. As you'll hear it termed, that's our wonderful government form. It kind of looks like the old faxes that you get.
Rick Brown asks, is it safe to assume that EDIs for BPA contracts? I think the easiest way to answer this is that any orders issued out of OMS is really, that's a preferred transmission method would be EDI. And most of those are issued against BPAs. And Jim's question about origin and destination and discrepancies in orders being issued out of OMS, I mean, those just need to be brought to our attention. I mean, there are, OMS and EDI are only as good as the data that's in the system. So, you know, there are, you know, we don't have perfect data in our system. There are some discrepancies in the data. And we obviously, you know, with a relatively new system like OMS, there are some defects, and, you know, we work through those defects. You just have to keep bringing that to our attention. I think we're getting a lot better fairly quickly, but it's not there yet. I don't know about that GD filter. Do you need to have ability to send 850 acknowledgments as well as receive and respond to 860 order changes? I think that's true. You see that one, Shanna?
Yes. So we consider the 855 transaction is your acknowledgement to the 850, and also the acknowledgement to the 860 transaction.
Yeah, Connie Lee, she had a question. I'd probably address that. Does OMS now allow for shipping terms on a contract that differs from the shipping terms on the underlying mass contract? For instance, mass contract terms are FOB origin, BPA shipping terms are destination. Has that been accounted for? Well, the BPA would have its own load that should have a destination in that into that BPA load, and that's what OMS would be issuing the order against. So yeah, it's the load for a specific item, whether it's a BPA or most of them are BPAs. And they do, the BPAs typically will have, I mean, for global supply especially, almost everything is FOB destination. So if your mass contract is origin, we're probably going to want destination pricing for the global supply BPA. And as far as I know Kristen had asked about, I'm curious to know why, as vendors, given the fact that the contracts are already in place, can't update our price to GSA, as this is a significant rise in cost for small vendors. If you're a small vendor, I mean, you could switch to vendor portal. I'm assuming you're getting orders via fax now. if you get your orders via vendor portal, there's probably not going to be much of a difference in price, if any, in obtaining your orders that way. So this is just a policy decision that was made at the highest level in the Federal Acquisition Service that we're not entertaining any cost modifications right now. You can still ask. You know, these are bilateral. Eventually, we're going to require this across the board. So I mean, it's probably in everyone's best interest to get on board and go EDI or decide you can handle vendor portal, because we probably will not be doing business with fax vendors in the future. Period. Sorry to sound harsh, but I mean that's just I'll be honest with you.
Well, in fact, on all our new contracts that we're awarding, either EDI or portal is required. So we're trying to get all the current vendors on that will agree to it, and then all the replacement contracts will be EDI or VP.
I think Lana, it's Guy John is the person that you want to, I think, reach out to. Yeah. GSAEDI@gsa.gov is an email address you should have down. If you got any EDI issues, send an email to that address. Guy is monitoring that. You know, I see it, but I'm not really. I look for contracting issues that come into that email box. And yes, if you're using vendor portal and you want to switch to EDI, you definitely are encouraged to do that. Understand that, you know, we're going to have a rush of vendors that want EDI, or, you know, we anticipate that will happen, and you're going to have to bear with us on scheduling, because we have, you know, limited resources. We can't onboard everybody at once, so it will take some time. We still have multiple attendees typing, so I'm assuming some questions are still coming in. Or maybe not. Shannon, I'll let you take that one on what they need to flip the switch. On new contracts, that's probably not going to be acceptable. I mean, because we want the full transaction sets. The confirmations and everything is you got to be full EDI for the new contract vehicles, or you do vendor portal, one or the other. Now, during this transition time, I think we're making some exceptions.
Yeah, in regards to Jim's, it is no longer acceptable because we now need your 856. The reason that we need the 856 is we need to communicate to the customer that their order has shipped. Without that, they think that their order is just sitting out there in Never Never Land. So if you were told back in December that, you know, an 810, you know, if you had the 810, you're not going to be able to process your 810 without the 856. So we need to do the 850. GSA is in the process of an 860 will transmit a PO cancellation. So we do need your ability to accept an 860. If we cancel a PO, we need you to be able to understand that this purchase order has been canceled. This will sometimes occur if a customer has now said, like, oops, we messed up. We sent you an order we didn't intend to. This could also occur if somebody messed up with their own data entry and fat-fingered a price. They need to cancel the order and they'll send you a new one. So we do need your ability to accept an 860.
Yes, so all the required transactions are in writing in the bilateral mod that is coming to your company. So every single one in there that says required is required.
Connie, I see Connie Lee submitted a relatively long statement, and all I can do is apologize. We do have issues at times. Sounds like there was a contract load issue, so there's really no question there. But I understand what you're saying. We do have contract load issues. Things happen in OMS, and sometimes it doesn't happen very well. And Catherine, yeah, there's an increased cost that we are required to manually go into vendor portal and accept the orders as well as enter all the shipping information. This was not required before and takes additional manpower for us small businesses. Understand your situation, but understand ours too. We have a lot of customers. That our customers are demanding pretty much in the commercial world. I think if you order something from Amazon, you're getting a confirmation number and shipping information almost immediately. We would like to be able to provide that service, and our customers are pretty much demanding it now and in the future. So it has to be done. I mean, we have to make the change. And there will, costs are always negotiable. I mean, there's always an end to your current period of performance, and that starts a new period of performance. You can decide you don't want to service us anymore. You can do that if you want to. I mean, we certainly encourage small business. We want to support small business, but we have to do this.
So going back to the PO cancel, if we send an 860 for a PO cancel, what if it's too late to cancel the order? Hopefully, even though we do rely on electronic systems and email is wonderful and EDI is wonderful, that does not eliminate the need for a phone call. So hopefully somebody has communicated with you all first and let you know that it's coming. There is a capability to reject a PO cancel request. If you had it all packaged up and it's sitting on the loading dock and you hadn't sent us the 856, there is still a capability to reject a PO cancellation request. And that is something that is in the 855. There are 3 things you can do, with the, and now I'm getting lost with all my own terminologies. Yeah, it's an 855, right? But there's 3 things that you can do. You can accept, you can back order, you can reject. And those are the 3 things that you can do with that.
Yeah.
And
in Jim's case, in Jim's case, I mean, he's receiving an order and he's shipping it right away. So, I mean, if you receive a cancellation request after it's shipped, you reject that cancellation request. As simple as that. I mean, we're responsible for getting those. You know, if you accept returns, yeah.
Please. There is a thing where, again, if there's a phone call, say, for instance, somebody had manually keyed in an order and they had typed in an incorrect price, but the scenario is you've already packaged it up, it's shipped. Hopefully, again, they've called you. You may want to go ahead and accept the cancellation, and what's going to occur is they'll send you a brand new PO that you don't ship on, but you would simply use to invoice for. So please bear in mind, you know, this gets a little complicated, so you don't want to just take everything as a rule of thumb of, I'm always going to do X, Y, and Z. Many of you are seasoned government contractors now. You know there's always an exception to every rule. We're great at that. So keep in mind, have those conversations with your contracting officers. We want things to go faster, but that doesn't eliminate the need to, you know, from time to time pick up a phone call and say, hey, what do you want me to do with this?
Thanks, Shannon, for the additional explanation. But I mean, if it's already shipped, it's shipped. I mean, if you get an order today and you got an order, you're going to ship it. And now the CO I don't know that you're going to get a call the same day an order is issued, unless it was just a mistake and you got that call instantly. Now, that's a different story. But if it's shipped, the government's responsible for either paying you for that or getting it back to you, and that depends on what your contract terms are on returns. Let's see, 850 and 860. Shannon, can you take that other question about, I might have answered that, but you might have answered that before. We currently receive 850s and 860s via EDI and send 856s and 810s via the vendor portal. Is this acceptable, or do we need to choose one or the other?
Well, you can't send an 810 via vendor portal. Vendor portal will not allow you to do any invoicing. You can send a shipment confirmation. It's not an 856. And then any invoicing must be done through the FedPay internet site. So to Bill West's question, once you are fully onboarded to EDI and you've gone through the full testing process, when you do receive a new contract, really what needs to be done is we establish an envelope for you and you validate that you're receiving orders. So we have from time to time gone through the process of establishing an envelope for a vendor and they forget to check. So that's about the extent of testing that would be required, is we would establish an envelope for you. There's not a full-blown testing, but we would touch base and make sure that, are you receiving orders, are you retrieving them? So it's much quicker. It's maybe a day or two, but that is, once again, once you've gone through the full suite of EDI testing. Once you've accomplished that, then the process of creating an envelope is fairly simple.
Yeah, Tracy Elliott, you're asking about the presentation in email. It's attached to the calendar invite. If you didn't get you should have gotten the calendar invite. Or you can just send an email to that GSA EDI at gsa.gov, and I'll see it, and I'll send you a copy of the presentation. And then we got two questions here from Rick Brown and Catherine Levy. They're both in the same vein, asking about points of contact being provided on orders. We give you what we got. Unfortunately, we don't have that information for every order. And Shannon, isn't that a thing? If it's coming in through DELMS, we typically don't have the point of contact information?
It typically, unless it is provided, we are going through our raw data to make sure, it really isn't there. Upgrading to the OMS system allowed us to intake more free-form text, and so we're combing through to make sure that it's not somewhere in there. One of the things that we have learned is our customers just got in the habit of not including it because our old system could not take it. And that's where my previous comment of we're trying to do an outreach and educate our customers like, hey, we can take your POC information. The nice thing, and I know, Catherine, you're concerned, like not having a POC information with those military bases. They are so used to addressing things based on the military DODAC, and that is why we are so stringent about the military standard of shipping and labeling. If you do adhere to those standards, it will get to the right location.
That question from Jim, I have no idea. Any idea how the payment confirmations from invoices will look when DFAS pays them so we can tie into our accounting system on the appropriate orders?
You won't be receiving payments from DFAS. So though that would be a separate conversation. All payments will be distributed by USDA Finance. They are the ones that are managing the GSA Finance operations now. So anything DFAS is not GSA related.
Right, I should have known that. That's what DFAS, something. Where'd that come from? Presentation will not open on the email. It's a PowerPoint presentation. You should be able to download it. If let me, hey, Don Gardner, could you just send me an email? Just a response to the invite, and I'll make sure you get the presentation. We might be getting close. Oh, we got somebody else. I was going to say last call.
Yeah. Do you have that other 10 company? I called that one number and it was some girl just answered. The 10 guys.
Somebody came off mute.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a 516 area code number. You are not muted. All right, it's been a whole 2 seconds of no questions. No.
No, we got some here. Let's see. I didn't. They were coming in. They come in below. Let's see. I assume we'll receive additional information as we proceed with other processing and validation. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of help on EDI onboarding anyway from the GSA IBM team. Yeah, Catherine, I know we've got an ongoing issue on providing POCs. I know that the carriers, they need somebody specifically to call. It is an identified issue, and our guys are working on it. I don't know if you have anything to add, Shannon, to that Bill West 2 statement about assistance in EDI onboarding, and he's got several issues in there. And Catherine's got, it appears that EDI has a 4-hour acceptance window that is 24/7. This is an automated feature. Are those batched somehow coming in? Oh, Guy, did you need access to the slides that are here now, or where the presentation is?
The presentation, I can't seem to download it to send it out.
Yeah, it's actually, I'll just email you. You want me to just email you the file, because this is a PowerPoint.
Oh, is it okay? Yeah. Send me the email, and I'll send it out.
Okay.
Thank you.
See, what will happen if we get more than 50 orders? Oh, as far as more than 50 orders a month and you're in vendor portal, I mean, you can always switch to EDI. I mean, you have to go through the onboarding process, and, that could take from 30 to 90 days, give or take. But you basically would just have more volume in vendor portal. But there's no limit in vendor portal. You could get, 1,000 orders a month in vendor portal. You got to go through them each, one at a time, but just like picking up faxes. So anyway, there's no limit on vendor portal. And Wendy and Jason, no, you really can't do a hybrid solution. You either got to have vendor portal or EDI, one or the other. Also work with the EDI team. Advantage is outside of the realm of what we're talking about here. So, that's, I don't know where. Shanna, there's a question from Jim. Is it possible to work with the EDI team to also get our Advantage orders set up at the same time to meet these minimums, or would it be a different team to work with on those orders? Yeah, it's going to be a different team. I'm not sure how Advantage works. I think the short answer is no. Oh, Catherine, are you I think you might be talking, I don't know, if you're talking about a time frame that's contractually required. Okay, we put the contractual requirement at 4 hours. Yeah, I don't know that I shouldn't say we're not enforcing that, but that's a contract requirement. It's a contract requirement. I don't know that anything's going to happen bad if if it comes in 8 hours. That functional acknowledgement, though, is just really saying, yeah, I got your transaction. So if you're set up in an electronic system on your end, it seems like that would be automatic. Right, and the vendor portal will recognize you have to go in there, sign on, and get your orders. So, that's we would obviously give you more time. And that last question about currently our GSA Advantage orders come in via the GSA vendor portal, so they will continue to come in this way even though we're set up through EDI. Yeah, I think that's a different, must be a different vendor portal you're referring to from Advantage. Because we're talking, this presentation is strictly talking about orders that are issued through OMS.
So there is one point of clarification. So many of our GSA global supply orders, we will find you all through GSA Advantage and place orders citing your multiple award schedule and even citing the prices and products that we find on GSA Advantage. So you might think it's a GSA Advantage order, but it is technically still a GSA Global Supply order using the information we found in Advantage, if we can't complicate that a bit more for you.
Yeah, the COs should be, they need to the COs need to contact you to let you know what's happening, because obviously you have to receive an order somehow. Now if you're receiving orders from something that's placed on Advantage to fill a requisition we've got that we were looking for a home for, basically a contract home, you probably want to get a vendor portal account so that you can retrieve orders via vendor portal. Because I'm assuming that that's going to be a real low order volume. That's why I say vendor portal. I don't know about the high priority. Jim has a question. Shanna, any idea on how high priority orders will need to be handled once we edit and put in the actual shipping address versus what was submitted to us? Do we somehow change addresses?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that means, edit and put in actual shipping address. I mean, typically if you're receiving an order, someone at GSA, even though it's a high priority order, if it's destined for one of our overseas locations, it should be citing one of the approved consolidation points, whether it's a DLA facility located in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, or Tracy, California.
Yeah, so it should already come. I mean, if it should be identified in the initial order that comes over, correct? So I'm not quite understanding there. Jim,
now, if it's a Navy order that says call this phone number.
Yeah, okay, that's different. That's different. Yep, it's the Navy order.
And if you all are not aware, the reason that we do have to populate call this phone number are those are typically naval ships at sea. We honestly do not know where they will be at port next. So dependent on when you receive those purchase orders, you do have to call the number to find out where the ship will be docked next. That is why I know it's a pain. I know you all just love calling that phone number, but it is the best way that we have.
Yeah, hey, Shanna, for purposes of OMS, I guess, and EDI transactions, though, there wouldn't really be any transaction required, would there? I mean, because we issued the order, they called it the number, they put the right address on it, they shipped it, and then they billed us, but there wouldn't be any other transactions, right?
It's going to be the same. You're going to continue to get it the same way to call this number. And honestly, the reason why is because we do provide a variety of commodities. There are some commodities that might have a 30 or 60-day delivery window. And if you're not going to ship for 60 days, you know, if we gave you an address the day we sent you the PO and it was for a ship at sea, I guarantee you that address is no good.
Laura, I don't think this doesn't impact how micro purchases are done. There's really no change there that I know of.
Well, the micro purchases will be coming through EDI or portal.
Yeah.
Just
yeah,
like the others.
It wouldn't be, right, just like the others. Right, Jim. There won't be any change to the EDI process, so. Oh, I see what Dave Miller's saying. Well, with the EDI transaction, Bo, it's going to have information on it that's telling you to call NAPS up, correct? I mean, you have to be able to process those to do that. I do understand your concern. I mean, it isn't totally automated, but it's a fact of life when you're dealing with Navy ships and they're moving around. I mean, you really can't. We just don't have that information in our system that we would be able to get it to you real time.
And honestly, unless everybody obtained a top secret security clearance, we won't.
Thanks, Melissa. Jim, I don't want to sound, nasty here, but who's serving who? And I hope you take the joke. And I will say, vendors do us a great service. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have vendors. So, you know, we exist with each other. We need each other. And I know sometimes it feels like, yeah, we're just throwing it over the fence and letting the vendor handle it all. But, you know, we're doing the best we can on our side, and we need you to do the best you can on your side. That's correct, Bill. Yeah. Yeah, those top secret clearances aren't all they're cracked up to be anyway. Thanks again, Laura. Well, Shanna, you think we can wrap it up? I think we're
Yeah.
always got the email address available. Well, we have a couple more here. See what happens. Yeah, let's wrap it up. Thanks, everybody, for calling in. And again, you got the email address. And, again, the calendar invite that I sent out, if you've got any remaining questions, you can go ahead and send them to me, too. Thanks, everybody. I'll wrap it up, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Shanna, Stephanie, Mark, everybody else.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.